This is an email. 2 sentences long, dated August 29th, 2006. It came from a store you shopped at your whole life, and it told about 400 people their jobs were gone. Here's the question this file has to answer. How does a company built on answers end up with none? That store had a promise. It was stamped on the door and the counter of every branch in America. You've got questions. We've got answers. Hold on to those 4 words. This whole case turns on them. The folder opens. Case number FM005. Subject, RadioShack. And it begins a long way from Fort Worth. 1921, Boston. 2 brothers, Theodore and Milton Deutschman, open a single shop selling parts for amateur radio. They sold to ham operators and to the men who ran the radio rooms on ships. That little room aboard ship had a name, the RadioShack. The name fit, so that's what they called the store. For 40 years it stayed small. 9 stores, a mail-order catalog, and by the early 1960s, nearly dead. Too much loose credit. Too much inventory. Around $800,000 in bills nobody was ever going to pay. Then a Texan walked in. Charles Tandy sold leather goods in Fort Worth, wallets, belts, hobby kits. He looked at this dying radio chain and paid $300,000 for it. Plenty of people thought he'd bought a corpse. Tandy did something ruthless and simple. He cut the product line from 40,000 items down to 2,500, killed the mail order, ended the credit. And he made every store manager buy a stake in his own store, so he'd run it like he owned it. Because now he did. It worked. Within 2 years, the losses turned to profit. And about 10 years after Tandy took over those 9 little stores, the company was opening 2 new RadioShacks every working day. He advertised like a man possessed. 9 cents of every dollar of profit poured back into flyers and newspaper ads. His rule for it was pure Texas. If you want to catch a mouse, you have to make a noise like a cheese. And the mouse came. If you grew up near one of those stores, you remember the rituals. A free battery card in your wallet. 1 battery a month, no purchase needed. A wall of parts drawers, where you could grab a 2N2222 transistor at 3 on a Sunday, and nowhere else would sell you one. Then, on August 3, 1977, RadioShack did something no one expected of a parts store. It sold you a computer. The TRS-80. $599. A whole computer, built and ready to run, at a time when most people who wanted one still had to solder it together from a kit.
If I gave one of these to my wife for Christmas, she'd think I was some kind of nut.
That was the company president talking. His own people didn't believe in it. Another executive heard the sales forecast and called it, quote, horse shit. So they hedged. They built exactly 3,500 machines, 1 for each store, so that if it flopped, each store could use one to count inventory. They sold 10,000 in the first 6 weeks, 55,000 in the first year, more than 200,000 before it was done. The little parts store had accidentally become one of the first computer companies in America. That same doubting president said one more thing about the machine, and history proved him right. This device, he said, was inevitably in the future of everyone in the civilized world. He just never guessed it would come for RadioShack, too. For a while, it looked unstoppable. By the late 1990s, RadioShack ran more than 7,000 stores across America, one within a few minutes of almost every home. That was the top of the mountain. Now watch how they walked off it. Start at the counter. For years, RadioShack drilled its clerks to ask for your name, your address, your phone number, even if all you came in for was a 9-volt battery. It got so routine that the whole country made a joke of it. On Seinfeld, in 1996, Kramer said the thing everyone had been thinking. Why does RadioShack ask for your phone number when you buy batteries? I don't know. The studio audience laughed because they'd all been asked. Hold on to that too. The names, the numbers. They come back before this is over. Here's what most people get wrong about RadioShack. The internet did not kill it. It made a decision that killed it first, years before Amazon was ever a threat. For decades, its edge was the boring, beautiful stuff. The odd component nobody else stocked. The clerk who actually knew what a capacitor did. Nobody shopped around on price for that. Then RadioShack walked away from it to chase cell phones and laptops. And on phones and laptops, the customer always shops around. The same box was cheaper at Best Buy, cheaper at Walmart, cheaper soon at a website called Amazon, while RadioShack's own site barely had a shopping cart. By the time they took the internet seriously, in 2006, Amazon already owned the future they'd handed away. So where did the money go? The money that could have built all of that. From 2000 to 2011, RadioShack spent more than $3 billion buying back its own stock. More than it earned in profit those same years. It propped up the share price and left nothing for the future. Inside the building, the mood matched the math. In 2006, the company brought in a cost cutter named Julian Day, a finance man out of Kmart and Sears who had never once run a sales floor. That August, about 400 people at headquarters opened the email from the very start of this file. Here is what it said.
The workforce reduction notification is currently in progress. Unfortunately, your position is one that has been eliminated.
No name, no meeting, no goodbye. A company whose whole promise was answers could not find the words to fire its own people to their faces. By 2014, RadioShack knew it looked old. So it bought a Super Bowl ad to laugh at itself, the one where the 80s call and want their store back, and a mob of 80s celebrities strips the place to the studs. People loved the ad. That was the problem. Months before the end, a writer in Forbes said it plainly. A great commercial can't fix a broken store. The company needed repairs, not applause. It didn't get them. On February 5, 2015, after 11 straight quarters of losing money, the company that promised America answers filed for bankruptcy and had none. And then came the part that still stings. Remember all those names and phone numbers collected at the counter for 30 years? In the bankruptcy, RadioShack tried to sell them. 65 million customer names and addresses, 13 million email addresses, put up for auction as an asset by a company whose own store signs used to brag that it never sold your information. The stores that survived were bought for scrap by a hedge fund and married to a cell carrier, Sprint, in one last-chance partnership. A store inside a store. Then, RadioShack's own creditors say Sprint turned the knife. They accused the carrier of using inside data to open its own shops right beside the best RadioShack locations, and of starving the partnership that was supposed to save the company. The creditors sued for $500 million and said Sprint had destroyed nearly 6,000 jobs. On March 8, 2017, RadioShack filed for bankruptcy a second time. This one was the end. 90-some years, down to about 70 stores. But a brand name never fully dies. It just changes hands. In 2020, a firm that collects dead brands, Pier 1, Dress Barn, bought the RadioShack name. its co-founder explained exactly why.
It's a trusted brand, and we buy brands because of the trust.
Trust. Hold that word. Because in 2022, that trusted brand's own Twitter account started posting crypto memes and profanity, and briefly renamed itself RadioShack. There was a coin, too. It was worth about a penny. And in September 2025, the men who bought a brand for its trust were charged by federal regulators with running a Ponzi scheme. $112 million spread across RadioShack and the other dead names they had been collecting. You've got questions. We've got answers. In the end, it's the men who owned that promise who owe the answers now, to the government and to hundreds of investors who trusted the name. As for the stores, a few are still out there, run today by a quiet Latin American company. But the old RadioShack chain in Mexico has dropped from 149 stores to just 16 in 4 years. Still dying, one shelf at a time. So that's the file. A store that spent a century answering everyone else's questions and ran clean out of its own. If you've still got a RadioShack battery card in a junk drawer or a TRS-80 in a closet, tell us one thing in the comments. What's the first thing you ever bought there? And who were you with? Every fact in this file is in the pinned comment. The folder closes. Case FM 005.